Master Kulits, episode 11 to 15.
Soon after Zane had taken a seat, the duel between Atticus and Gustav came to an end. Although Atticus had won, he didn't appear to be very excited about it. He stared straight at Zane and pointed his twin curved blades at him.
I didn't expect you to be here. I lost to you last time, but today, I'm going to wipe the floor with you.
What's the reward for winning first place?
Zane shouted back at Atticus. Laughter erupted throughout the room and some exchanged puzzled looks.
First place? Do you really think you stand a chance? You're embarrassing yourself.
Do you believe you can repeat the success you had 3 years ago? You put on a good show back then, but things are different now.
Yeah, many of us have already reached the 7th stage of body tempering, but you're only at the 5th stage. You've got no chance.
The ridicule didn't stop, and Starlight Tower was full of raucous laughter. Almost everyone thought Zane was grasping at straws to save his reputation. Then Elora stood up.
First prize is a chance to study the star map.
She pointed at the crystal screen above her. The surface of the screen flickered and rotated in a particular pattern. It was rumored that the star map was the work of an expert who had joined the Five Spirits sect. He had used a star's orbit to comprehend a powerful technique, and for the benefit of future generations, he had engraved the secrets and mysteries of the heavens within the star map. For most of the year, the star map was stored away, and it was only taken out at the assembly of stars for all to feast their eyes upon.
If I'm not mistaken, the star map isn't complete. There must be some restrictive spell that changes the orbit of the stars.
He then turned to look at Atticus, and an odd smile tugged at the corners of his mouth.
Very well. You're a worthy opponent, so let's do this.
Holding his wooden sword, he walked slowly to the arena as everyone stared at him in disbelief. Atticus roared in anger as he glared at Zane's sword.
What is this? A wooden sword? Who do you think you're about to fight? Is that how little you think of me?
Zane laughed.
Not at all. I'm just worried that I might accidentally kill you.
Whispers filled the room as Zane's claims sparked discussion. Atticus couldn't stand Zane's arrogance a moment longer, and he snarled as power surged from him, causing streams of air currents to circle him. With a swift jump, he shot forward, spiraling like an arrow from a bow, fully intending to end Zane. The sharp sound of metal clanging echoed through the air as Atticus's dual sabers danced, forming light and shadows as they struck out. The crowd cheered for him as they looked on eagerly. But Zane didn't move a muscle. Everyone thought he was frozen in fear, accepting that he was doomed. A faint silver light flashed in the depths of Zane's eyes as he watched Atticus approach. Atticus wielded his dual blades, and with his infinite strength, he appeared unstoppable. But after practicing the art of sword drawing and the separation of vital energy, Zane possessed a unique understanding of the sword technique. As a result, he didn't see Atticus as a true threat. Instead, he saw a flawed, mediocre warrior who only knew how to cut and slash. In his opinion, the man's technique was sloppy and full of holes. He took a small step back and thrust out with the wooden sword. No vital energy or surging power accompanied it, yet it somehow withstood Atticus's strike, stopping the man in his tracks. Atticus's eyes widened in shock as he realized his dual blades and Zane's wooden sword were locked in a stalemate. Just about everyone had an opinion, and Atticus was mortified when he heard the discussions.
How dare you humiliate me by performing a lesser technique? Use whatever moves you have, because I don't need your pity.
He jumped, and the air current around him grew stronger, while his twin blades emitted a faint light. Suddenly, he seemed to blur, and then he disappeared from the arena. All that was left were the shadows of blades closing in on Zane from every direction. Just as everyone thought that Zane's life was about to end, an indescribable fury burned within Zane's heart, and he tightened his grip on the wooden sword.
Fine. Have it your way.
He closed his eyes and shut out all sound, ignoring the shadow blades closing in on him. His attention was wholly on the sword in his hand as he prepared to use the art of sword drawing. A loud, deafening whoosh preceded a flash of light sweeping over the arena, effortlessly shattering the shadow blades. From out of nowhere, a stream of blood sprayed out, accompanied by a shrill cry. Atticus rematerialized and staggered back. A streak of blood ran down his arm, and his breathing was ragged. He was also sweating profusely, and one of his blades was smashed to pieces and scattered all over the ground. The crowd gasped. Everyone was so shocked that their eyes were comically wide. As Bram watched Zane's fight from the second floor, he clenched his jaw in frustration. In the past, while practicing the Heavenly Sword technique with Zane, they had been on equal footing. However, Zane's possession of the Dark Sword spirit body had provided him with a distinct advantage. In the end, Bram resorted to treachery by using Freya to destroy Zane's energy center along with his Dark Sword spirit body. After meticulous planning, he had finally succeeded. But it didn't matter. It seemed Zane still exhibited remarkable power.
Look at what he can do with the Heavenly Sword technique. I must learn to do that too.
Bram thought, his eyes flashing with jealousy. Atticus took a few steps back and sighed helplessly.
You're strong. I guess I'll have to concede defeat.
Hoots and cheers filled Starlight Tower as the audience applauded, leading the Assembly of Stars to a giddy climax. Zane's resilience in the face of doubt, ridicule, and contempt was evident, earning admiration from everyone present.
Do you think he'll be able to win first place in the Assembly of Stars? It's difficult to say. Although his art of sword drawing is great, there are many renowned warriors here this year.
A woman stepped forward and joined the conversation.
Quite a few of them are in the 8th stage of body tempering, so they might win the competition.
And what if Devlin decides to show up? And Elora is here too, so who knows what will happen? She's overwhelmingly powerful as well.
The crowd chattered non-stop as they surrounded Zane. Suddenly, an attractive woman came forward, stepping into the arena. A fascinating pink flush appeared on her face as she looked at Zane.
I'd like to spar with you.
Everyone turned their attention to the woman, and the arena grew quiet as they listened for Zane's response. Zane frowned as he looked at her, sizing her up, and then he shook his head.
You're no match for me, so please leave. I don't want to hurt you.
The woman was used to getting her way, so Zane's blunt rejection shocked her. But instead of losing interest, his indifference made her ramp up her efforts. As she moved closer to him, his wooden sword flashed and reappeared at her neck. A thread of red blood slowly seeped from the cut on her skin and dripped onto the ground. The woman was stunned, but then she recovered enough to glare at him.
You're a pig.
She snapped at him. With that, she whirled around and stomped away. Elora laughed as she watched the altercation, and she was growing increasingly curious about Zane. As soon as the woman was gone, a muscular young man with a silver spear tied to his back walked up to Zane.
I'm Frode, master of the Peerless Spear. Spar with me.
Vital energy surged around Frode's body, and he appeared to be in the 7th stage of body tempering. When he stepped onto the stage, Zane could sense that his opponent was much more powerful than he was. Zane muttered to himself, sure that he had never heard of the man. But before he could say anything, Frode let out a loud cry.
Fight me!
Frode's long spear slashed through the cloth tied around it, and then he pointed the silver spear in Zane's direction. In an instant, it cut through the air, its tip burning as it sped toward its target. Zane swung his wooden sword, and a loud rumble reverberated as waves of air pushed him and Frode backward. Frode was forced 6 steps back before he managed to steady himself. Unexpectedly, he laughed out in glee, shocking everyone around him, and then he jumped up with a cry. As he twirled the long spear, it formed a silver wheel that released a flowery fragrance, and then a small purple flower sprouted on the top of the spear. It was soon joined by another and another, and the smell was getting more and more pungent. A moment later, over 1,000 spears of blossoms rained down on Zane. Everyone in the crowd stared at them, wondering if they were real or fake. Suddenly, one of the flowers exploded, sending sparks flying through the arena in every direction. In an instant, it turned into a sea of fire that engulfed Zane. Using his art of sword drawing, Zane cut through the fire, and the flames died out, sending the ashes of flowers falling to the floor. When the blaze disappeared, Frode's face turned ashen. He looked down at the wooden sword at his neck, and then he chuckled.
After cultivating the Peerless Spear for more than 20 years, I didn't think anyone under the 7th stage of body tempering could beat me. But in the end, I lost to a guy with a wooden sword.
He roared with laughter.
All right, I concede defeat.
The audience began to chant Zane's name. He had quickly become the center of attention, and more adoring gazes and praises were heaped on him. But the more the crowd cheered Zane's name, the angrier Bram became. He cursed at Freya.
Is it time yet?
It should be soon.
Freya stammered. She lowered her head, not daring to meet Bram's eyes. A thunderous ring sounded from the platform, followed by a large man walking onto the stage. He was nearly 8 feet tall, so he towered over Zane. Under his bronze skin were muscles and bones that had gone through tempering 1,000 times, and his very presence was intimidating. As soon as the man appeared, the crowd burst into an excited conversation.
Isn't that Devlin? It looks like Zane's triumph will end here.
Several people nodded in agreement.
I don't think so. Didn't any of you see Zane's victory earlier?
Don't you know why Devlin is called the Ghost Hand? His hands have been refined by hundreds of potions since childhood, and he's now immune to fire and water. I've heard that no one in the surrounding 3 counties can break through his defenses.
Devlin appeared quite indifferent as he looked at Zane, who was much shorter than him.
So, you're Zane? If I rip your head off, Bram will reward me for sure.
With that, he leaped into the air, and the sheer force of his feet caused cracks to appear on the arena's floor. Then he descended on Zane, attempting to crush him into dust. Facing Devlin, Zane knew his opponent had achieved the 7th stage of body tempering, so swords would be useless against him. He thought,
I would be a fool to underestimate him.
Unsheathing his wooden sword, he narrowed his eyes in concentration, and then he let out a low growl. A split second later, he shot a flash of bright yellow light toward Devlin, but as soon as it came within striking distance, Devlin intercepted it. A loud boom echoed around the arena, and the sword light shattered. Zane's jaw tensed nervously, and he quickly leaped out of the way of the inevitable counterattack. As he landed back on the ground, he launched another attack before Devlin had time to regroup. He began to move his wooden sword in an erratic manner, and before Devlin could react, Zane hit him in the middle of his forehead with a gut-wrenching crack. Even though the sword was only made of wood, the blow would have critically injured an ordinary person. But Devlin was no ordinary man. To him, it was as if a small twig had lightly brushed against his face, and all it succeeded in doing was angering him even more. As he used his Ghost Eagle Claw attack, a layer of dark gray fog enveloped his hands, and his fingers turned into claws that glided through the air at lightning speed. The wooden sword was instantly smashed into a dozen pieces. Zane was stunned by what he had just witnessed. Devlin laughed as he noted the dumbfounded look on his opponent's face, but then his smirk turned into a sneer.
Those good-for-nothing idiots must be really useless if they lost to someone as weak as you. I could crush you with one hand tied behind my back. You can either put up a real fight, or I'll get this over with right now.
He taunted Zane. Instead of allowing himself to be intimidated, Zane squared his shoulders and glared back at the other man.
You're the one who should be worried.
Devlin was surprised by Zane's bravado, and his haughty grin transformed into a puzzled frown. He wasn't going to allow Zane to get the better of him, though, so he quickly repeated his previous offensive move. His ghost-like hand slashed mercilessly at Zane's head, but Zane had already retrieved the Sky Sword from his storage ring, an interdimensional device that allowed him to carry any number of things around with him to access whenever he needed them. As he stared at Devlin, he brandished the sword with both hands. A loud ringing noise filled the air, and a blindingly bright light began to emanate from Zane's sword. Above the arena, the sky darkened, and an eerie silence fell. With Zane at the epicenter, the light shot out in all directions, and in an instant, It broke through the fog surrounding Devlin's hand and pulverized it. A moment later, it penetrated the rest of his flesh and bones, not allowing him enough time to react. With one slash, Devlin fell to the ground, and his severed arm flew through the air. With a deafening boom, the other shafts of light hit the 8 demon pillars that were dotted around the Starlight Tower. Large cracks began to appear in the once solid stonework, and a gust of wind sent large plumes of smoke and dust flying into the air. No one in the crowd could believe what they were seeing, and many of the onlookers' jaws hung open. One man thought,
How can someone who's only completed the 5th stage of body tempering do this? It's more like something that someone in the 8th stage would be able to do.
After watching Zane wield his wooden sword earlier, everyone was starting to believe that he had hidden his true strength. The thought terrified them, and even Bram's face turned ashen. Devlin's severed limb finally landed on the ground, and he fainted from the pain. Losing interest in his opponent, Zane looked to the second tier of the stands and scowled at Bram and Freya as he pointed his sword at them.
Have you two seen enough yet?
He asked as they squirmed awkwardly in their seats.
Come down here, and we can settle this once and for all.
Oh, why is it always you? You're always getting in my way. Why won't you just die?
He was bursting with rage and was about to jump down from his seat to fight with his rival, but a middle-aged man in a long, white robe reached out and stopped him.
Don't do something you'll regret. This is the Assembly of Stars, and it's taking place within the grounds of the governor's mansion.
Bram wanted to ignore him, but the man kept a firm grip on his arm.
That guy's heavenly sword technique seems to be far more advanced than ours is.
The man told Bram, keeping his voice low.
We need to find a way to harness that power before he dies.
He turned to the people around them.
Someone should tell the 7th Elder to prepare. I intend to have that young man's body soon enough, and then I'll be able to use his heavenly sword technique.
His confident assertion seemed to calm Bram down, and that was when Zane realized that the older man was Bram's father, Lyle, the patriarch of the Martell family.
Yes, father.
Bram replied with an obedient nod. His anger had melted away the instant Lyle had stated that he intended to deal with Zane. He almost felt sorry for his rival, as he knew how brutal his father could be. He thought,
Soon enough, he'll be wishing he was already dead.
Realizing that Bram wasn't going to come down and face him, Zane laughed.
I always knew you were a worthless coward.
He yelled up to him. Then he turned to scan the faces of the other people in the crowd.
Who's next?
Although his challenge was loud enough for everybody to hear, no one dared step forward or meet his eye. Devlin had been seemingly invincible, yet Zane had cut him down in one stroke and had almost brought the Starlight Tower down at the same time. As far as they were concerned, only an idiot would be crazy enough to fight him. Suddenly, the nervous silence in the arena was punctuated by one man's raucous laughter.
You might be young, but you sure aren't shy about how gifted you are. I like it.
Clad in purple leather from head to toe, a white-haired old man got to his feet, sporting a broad grin. He was looking at Zane approvingly, and he actually clapped politely for a few seconds. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise as they recognized Malik Kramer, the governor of Kintyre County. He was also an elder of the Kramer family, and he only answered to one other person in the region. In the blink of an eye, everyone in the crowd got to their feet and greeted him. Several people cried out, "Hail to the governor!" Malik brushed off their salutation with a wave of his hand, and then he gestured for everyone to sit back down. After that, he turned his attention back to Zane.
I must admit, I'm impressed. It must be true what they say about every generation exceeding the previous one. In that case, I fear I'm getting old.
He smiled warmly at the young warrior and then glanced around at the people in the crowd.
But my memory is still intact, so I intend to give everyone the rewards that I promised them.
With that, he raised one of his hands, and a red light shot from his arm and up to the crystal screen above their heads that displayed the star map. The restrictions that had been placed on the map were removed, and the strange trajectory of the stars was immediately corrected. Zane looked up, and a confused frown creased his forehead. He thought,
What's going on? I thought the chance to study the star map was supposed to be the top prize.
Realizing that he didn't have enough time to worry about that, he followed the example of the other people in the arena and quickly sat down to examine the stars. Even if he was puzzled by the governor's actions, he wasn't about to waste such an opportunity. The 108 stars on the star map above Zane's head flickered brightly. The large and small groups of stars shimmered as they slowly rotated. Among them was one particular constellation, which revolved strangely and unpredictably, leaving Zane increasingly confused.
What kind of martial arts technique could it possibly represent?
Zane thought. As time marched on, he did his best to memorize the star map in the same way that everybody else around him was attempting to. Closing his eyes, he delved into its profundity, attempting to grasp its secrets. Half an hour later, one man finally shook his head, stood up, and walked away regretfully. Knowing that his talent was limited, he didn't want to waste any more of his time. Gradually, more and more people realized that they couldn't understand the complexities of the star map. It was living up to its reputation that only a true genius would be able to fully comprehend the information it held. Eventually, there were only 3 people left in the whole of the Starlight Tower: Bram, Elora, and Zane. Suddenly, Bram's eyes widened in surprise as if he had just understood something profound, and then he got to his feet. Throwing his head back, he laughed heartily, and then his smile gradually turned to a sneer when his gaze landed on Zane.
So, you're still here, are you? You should make the most of your last few hours because you're a dead man walking.
Bram then bid farewell to Malik and returned home. When another hour passed, Zane slowly opened his eyes. He already had some understanding of the movement of the stars within the star map, but it was so vast that it almost seemed unreal. He thought,
who could possibly understand all of this?
Still puzzled, he lowered his head as he contemplated everything he had seen above. It therefore took him several minutes to realize that a pair of eyes was staring at him in amusement.
I can see how confused you are. Is the movement of the stars in the star map that incomprehensible?
Zane raised his head and looked at the man, noting his slight smile. He then turned to address Elora.
It looks like you've gotten a lot out of studying the map. Would you mind giving me some pointers?
Malik was taken aback by the question, and so was Elora. She had to glance over at him to confirm that he was actually talking to her. She thought,
There's no way Zane didn't discover the mysteries of the star map for himself. Is he testing me?
Elora eventually replied.
You've got to be joking, right? If someone as talented as you can't comprehend it, what chance do I have?
In her mind, Zane was the best warrior in Kintyre County, and his genius was unmatched throughout the Yarrow Kingdom. Even putting his art of sword-drawing skills to one side, every blow he rained down on someone would almost certainly be fatal. If news of such a young alchemist were to get out, the Imperial Army wouldn't hesitate to extend an olive branch to him. Although Elora was talented in her own right, she knew she could easily be eclipsed by Zane. Having nearly unraveled the mysteries of the star map, both Zane and Elora expressed gratitude to Malik before departing from Starlight Tower. Elora walked alongside Zane with a spring in her step.
You're such a skilled alchemist. How long have you been practicing?
Zane opened his mouth to reply, but then she turned to him with a serious look, causing him to stop in his tracks. Elora met his gaze.
I need to ask you a favor. My life actually depends on it, so I really hope you won't say no.
Zane was startled by her plea and couldn't begin to imagine what she was going to ask of him. Seeing how confused he was, Elora took out a yellow medicinal pill from her storage ring. As soon as it appeared, its heavy scent filled Starlight Tower, attracting every bee and butterfly within a mile, like moths to a flame. Aware of the pill's potency, she hurriedly put it into a small box to prevent any unnecessary incident from happening.
Is that what I think it is?
His expression was grave as he took the box from Elora. From its medicinal smell alone, he could tell that it was the highest-grade spiritual pill in existence. If an ordinary alchemist wanted to refine a pill like that, They would have to spend half their life researching how to do it. Elora nervously chewed at her lip, and then she started to explain.
It's a golden essence pill. It provides an astonishing amount of vital energy, but it contains traces of purple vine leaves too, and they're affecting my body. If I can't get hold of more of these leaves soon, I'm afraid I'm going to die.
She took a moment to calm herself down, and then she continued her story.
The alchemist who used to refine the golden essence pills for me has disappeared into thin air. Right now, I'm desperate, so I'm really hoping you can help me.
Zane understood that Elora was asking him to refine the pills for her, and he decided to grant her wish. He thought,
Why else would I have found the recipe if I wasn't meant to help her out? That doesn't mean I'll do it without asking for something in return.
He sighed.
Believe me, I understand the gravity of your predicament, but refining pills takes a lot of time and energy. I can't just lend a hand without something in return. It's not how things roll around here, and I'd be inviting trouble.
Elora wasn't disappointed by his cautious response, as she had anticipated such a scenario. She took out a scroll that emitted an ancient aura and handed it over to Zane.
This is a copy of the Book of Divine Thunder. Although it's incomplete and only has one level, it is still a yellow rank, middle-grade martial art with amazing power. You help me, and this is yours.
Zane's eyes widened in awe as he held the Book of Divine Thunder. He thought,
Is this really a yellow rank, middle-grade skill?
His heavenly sword technique was only a low-grade skill, but after using the Great Decryptor, it was clear that he already possessed a lot of power. Once the Dark Shadow decrypted the Book of Divine Thunder, Zane knew he would be practically unstoppable. Overjoyed by the idea, he didn't need to think over the exchange any further. He immediately threw the scroll into his storage ring, stored the golden essence pill, and agreed to the deal. While Elora walked alongside him and chatted, he noticed that she had an entourage following them a few feet away. One person was at the first stage of the foundation level, while the other two were at the 9th stage of body tempering.
Why haven't I heard of Elora before?
Zane thought with a frown.
Where is she from? And why are so many people protecting her?
Zane's curiosity got the better of him, and he couldn't resist probing into Elora's past.
I've lived in Kintyre County since I was born, and I thought I knew every beautiful young woman who lived here. I've never seen you around before, though. Where are you from? Did you just fall out of the sky?
Elora grinned back at him as she pushed a stray strand of her hair back behind her ear.
Are you planning to ask me out?
She teased Zane. Zane wasn't expecting her to be so bold, so he blushed furiously as he waved his hands dismissively.
That's not what I meant!
He protested. Elora burst out laughing, amused by how cute he was being.
Don't worry. I'm just teasing you. I'm actually waiting for someone to come and take me away from here, and I'm expecting them to arrive pretty soon.
Zane nodded, but he didn't fully understand what she meant. He thought,
She's clearly not from Kintyre County then. Where did she come from? And is she going to return there?
He didn't ask those questions out loud. Elora was leaving soon, and he probably wouldn't see her again, so there seemed little point in prying. Suddenly, they stopped in their tracks as a deathly hush descended all around them. A cold wind blew, picking up the fallen leaves from the ground and sending them twisting through the air. Zane's eyes instantly narrowed as he sensed what was going on.
It appears I've attracted a few dirty rats.
He took a step forward, and his brow creased in concentration as a sword appeared in his hand.
No, make that 6 dirty rats. I guess Bram isn't messing around this time. It looks like he's sent 6 warriors to kill me.
Although they hadn't materialized yet, Zane could already tell that 5 of them were at the 7th stage of body tempering, while the other one was 2 stages above them. The 6 assassins clad in black robes soon revealed themselves, their eyes locked on their target. Their leader was a bald man with an ugly, horse-like face. He had reached the peak of the 9th stage of body tempering, and he was preparing to release his vital energy. Zane sighed, all too familiar with the man. He was Aziel Martel, the Elder of General Affairs and the 7th Elder of the Martel family, and he was looking at Zane like he wanted to strike him dead.
As smart as you are, you're still wrong.
Aziel told him with a smirk.
It isn't Bram who wants you dead this time. It's the First Elder. If I were you, I'd play dead until I found a hole to crawl into. It's the only way you'll live another day.
Then he spotted Elora and licked his lips.
I don't know why a beauty like you is hanging out with a dead man walking. You should come and see me. I'm sure I could show you a good time.
Zane was furious. He was about to unsheath his sky sword and fight to the death when Elora placed her hand on his shoulder, stopping him. She wasn't angered by the old man's ridiculous comment. In fact, she was amused by it.
The best way to catch a rat is with a cat.
She pointed out, smiling at Zane.
We should let the cats play and continue our conversation.
She completely ignored Aziel and the others and grabbed Zane's hand to lead him past the group of would-be assassins. The elder was burning with rage that he had been so casually dismissed, and his whole body was crackling with energy.
How dare you disrespect me like that? You're both going to regret that.
Then he turned to his men and gestured toward the duo.
Kill him and then take her back to my room.
As the men were practically rubbing their hands together in glee, a dark figure dropped from the sky like a boulder.
If you hurt a hair on her head, you'll be digging your own graves.
Otto warned them. His palm was instantly enveloped in red light, and a wave of energy shot out, hitting Aziel in the chest with a deafening boom. The old man stumbled back several steps as a result of the impact, and the smell of burnt flesh emanated from him. When he looked down, he saw that his chest had been mutilated by the blow.
He has to be at the pinnacle of the Foundation level.
His eyes widened in shock as a metallic taste spread on his tongue. Soon, blood spurted from his mouth, instantly weakening his aura. Zane was about to help Otto when Elora stood in front of him and held him back.
Otto will take care of those idiots. We've saved your life tonight, so I hope you won't forget our agreement.
As they walked away, they could hear the sound of fighting and the screams of Aziel and his men as fire blazed across the sky. When they finally reached Martell Mansion, Elora waved goodbye and then turned to leave. Zane watched her go, and then he stared at the hand she had held, lost in thought. Eventually, he shook his head to snap himself out of it and went inside. The following day, Zane slowly put away the Book of Divine Thunder in the Dragon Prison. Once done, he breathed a sigh of relief. The book's power surpassed even his wildest expectations. According to the records, those who practiced with the Book of Divine Thunder would be able to summon 9 days of divine thunder and embed them in their energy center. The practitioner would also be able to utilize up to 13 types of thunder, depending on their health and their level of talent. Zane raised his hands and looked skyward. Not wasting any time, he summoned Purple Soul Thunder, Thunder of Protection, and Thunder of Wind and Cloud. In the endless sea of stars above the Dragon Prison, a peal of rolling thunder announced a cosmic shift. A bolt of black lightning suddenly shot out, transforming into a human-sized divine dragon that roared in the sky. The beast's aura was astonishing, and it caused the entire world encapsulated in the Dragon Prison to darken and sink. A terrifying, destructive force gathered in the sky and slowly formed around the divine dragon. It was the most powerful type of divine thunder, and even though it was only the length and thickness of a strand of hair, it contained the aura of the divine dragon. The beast screeched and turned to dust, and its shed scales floated through the air, turning into a series of booming thunderbolts. They formed a lake of thunder, which broke apart and rained down like a hailstorm. But just when they were about to hit the Dragon Prison, an enigmatic force swallowed them up. Zane sat naked on the ground with his eyes closed in concentration, as he couldn't risk making a mistake. Seconds later, he opened his eyes again and stared into the sky at the thunder surrounding the divine dragon. As he clenched his fist, black lightning fell from the sky. With a swoosh, it struck Zane right between the eyebrows and entered his energy center. The sensation left him trembling, his face drained. After the black thunderbolt disappeared, the Dragon Prison went back to normal, leaving Zane elated. As he examined his energy center, he got lost in his thoughts. He knew that divine thunder differed from the 13 types of lightning that were described in the book. He thought,
Is it because I have a dragon spirit body? Or is it because of the dragon prison? Maybe it's because I drew energy from the endless sea of stars.
all those questions clouded Zane's mind, but he knew he needed to settle on a name for the new technique. Eventually, he decided what to call it and shouted aloud,
Dark Sky Thunder!